Hello and welcome to another edition of Active Living. Today we have a very special guest. We got Joe Johnson here. Joe is from ONTV, and Joe is a world traveler. I should say a West Coast traveler anyway.
That's right. I wouldn't say world traveler, but I do like to travel within the United States.
Well, you travel within your own world, which is kind of like out in California.
That's right.
And Joe likes to kind of hobnob with some of the rich and famous out there.
That's right.
So
yeah, you know, a lot of people when they go to LA, they're like, oh, I hope I could run into a celebrity, you know. Every time I go, I run into 30 celebrities.
Really?
I call myself a celebrity magnet. Yeah.
Well, you know, how do you find these guys? How do you?
You got to know where to look. I mean, obviously, there's places like the comedy clubs. You go to the comedy clubs, they have some of the biggest names of comedy performing at local clubs for $15 a ticket.
Really?
These are people that would fill arenas here in Detroit, you know. And then, you know, you go to the movie studios and you could get free tickets to TV shows. There's all kinds of ways to see celebrities in LA.
Wow. Like I say, I haven't been out there in years, but the last time I went out, I think we went to one of the studios and we saw, you know, we rode on one of these fake ships, and we had Jaws come up out of the water at us, you know, stuff like that.
Universal, that's a great tour.
That was great. Yeah. But anyway, tell us about who you saw out there.
Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of a chronological story of what we experienced out there. Part of my love of Hollywood is the history of Hollywood.
Okay.
So in addition to the movies and TV stars and movie stars and all that stuff, I love the history. And one of the greatest aspects of LA history are the restaurants.
Yeah.
There's some historic restaurants that are patronized and have been patronized by some of the biggest stars in the world. And one of the most famous, believe it or not, I just visited for the first time on my most recent trip. It's called Musso and Franks Grill. It's on Hollywood Boulevard, and it just recently celebrated its 100th anniversary back in September. And they were rewarded with a star on the Walk of Fame. If you take a look at the image there, it's the first restaurant ever to get a star on the Walk of Fame. In addition to being this historic restaurant with an amazing history, it's been featured in films and TV shows, and most recently it was featured in Quentin Tarantino's new movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Brad Pitt and Leo DiCaprio meet with Al Pacino in the restaurant, and they filmed it at the actual restaurant. And you could see in that collage that me and my friend Rich are standing in the same spot where Brad and Leo are standing.
Right.
And it's just an amazing history there. I read one story that said this is where Bugsy Siegel had his last meal before he went home and was gunned down in his home.
Really?
And all, you know, Humphrey Bogart, all the big stars went to Musso and Frank in its heyday. So 100 years in Hollywood. Imagine what the people there have seen.
You got all the old stars like Bing Crosby and you know, all those guys that that were, I'm sure, went through there.
Exactly, and that's what I love about it.
Now, when you go into did you get into the restaurant?
Oh, sure. It's easy to go in there for lunch.
Do they have all kinds of memorabilia on the wall?
Nothing really. Basically, it just looks like it has for 100 years, and they have what's called the new side and the old side. But the new side dates back to like 1945 or something. So even the new side is old.
Right.
But their goal is to give you an experience like you're traveling back in time.
Okay, really?
So
sounds interesting.
So because that restaurant was featured in this movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, my friends and I decided we were going to try and hit some of the locations that were featured in the film. And next up we have one of those locations. This is the house that the main character, Rick Dalton, lived in the movie, which was supposed to be located next door to Sharon Tate's house. Now, if you remember the story of Sharon Tate and her friends, they were all brutally murdered by the Manson family back in 1969. This movie does sort of an alternate take on the story. Believe it or not, it's a much more uplifting tale than what happened in real life. Yeah, so the house isn't really located next to Sharon Tate's house, But they did film scenes on Cielo Drive. The two pictures in the top right corner there, I took at Cielo Drive. Now that's where the real Sharon Tate's house was located when those brutal murders happened. The house itself doesn't exist anymore. They obviously tore that down. But they did film some scenes there, and as the characters would drive up Cielo Drive, they would end up at the fictional house, which was located in a different part of LA.
How do you find these places? I mean, you must have to do a lot of research to
Part of it is detective work, and that's always fun when you discover something and things line up. A lot of it is just Google. You know, there's a lot of addresses and stuff that are listed on Google where you can say, oh, where's this house in this movie? And they'll tell you exactly where it is.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think the homeowners appreciate that because they have people visiting all day long.
Sure.
But, it's pretty easy to do that. So, and then that evening, we visited this restaurant, El Coyote, famous restaurant in LA, great food. Also featured in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And this happened to be, in real life, the last restaurant that Sharon Tate and her friends ate at before they went home. And the tragic incident happened at the home. So this has a historical connection, and it also has a connection to the movies. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So you must do a tremendous amount of research.
I do. I try to plan things, but then just kind of let things happen naturally too. And you'd be surprised at what we run into just doing something off script, you know.
That's fantastic.
So one of the reasons I timed my trip in mid-October was to coincide with the LA Comic-Con. This was the third LA Comic-Con I've attended over the last 3 years. And you ask, where can you go to see celebrities? LA Comic-Con is a great one to go to see celebrities. First celebrities I saw when I arrived were Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes, who are the stars of Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. They created this entire movie universe that made them famous. And then as I wandered around, I saw Elijah Wood, who was in the Lord of the Rings movies, Barry Bostwick, who's been in television and film, just passing celebrities as you're walking around, and you go, hey, I enjoy your work, you know. And then they did a Q&A on the main stage at LA Comic-Con for the new movie that just came out, Zombieland 2. And some of the stars of that movie appeared on stage. Jesse Eisenberg, who's the star of the movie, Rosario Dawson. Those are some stars in LA, you know, young, popular stars today. So that's just a great spot to spot celebrities.
So you had a field day there at the Comic-Con.
It is. That's my element. Those are my people, I like to say.
I guess so.
Definitely. Again, this is a mixture of history and Hollywood. There's a hotel in downtown LA called the Biltmore, and it has been the location of many, many films. One of my all-time favorites, Beverly Hills Cop. When Eddie Murphy arrives in Beverly Hills, he goes to check into this hotel. They don't have any rooms available, so he gets angry and pretends to be a reporter from Rolling Stone, and he plays the race card, and they said, oh, no, we have a room for you, and they give him some outrageous price, and he's like, okay, I'll take it. So that was featured prominently in Beverly Hills Cop and also in the movie Ghostbusters.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I was under the impression that most of Ghostbusters was filmed in New York because that's where the movie's set, but I have since found out that because it's Hollywood, they filmed a lot of scenes in Hollywood. And there's a pretty famous scene in Ghostbusters where they're called to a hotel and Slimer, the green ghost, is causing trouble, and he gets into this banquet room, and the Ghostbusters go in there and they destroy the banquet room trying to kill Slimer. Well, that banquet room was at the Biltmore Hotel, and that's where they filmed that famous scene.
Wow.
And that's one of my all-time favorite movies. It was amazing to see things line up. Like in the top right corner, you'll notice the proton pack particle streams trying to get Slimer. Well, look at the ceiling. You notice how the ceiling matches up. That's a scene from the movie on top, and directly below it is a photo that I took.
Oh, wow.
So you can see how things line up just right.
Yeah.
So that's something I really enjoy doing when I go to LA is visiting these movie locations. And surprisingly, things haven't changed that much. So
how do you get these pictures out of these movies, like that scene?
Oh,
that
I could do screen grabs. I'll go to
Okay.
YouTube. There's a lot of clips and stuff on YouTube.
So you grab it off YouTube.
I'll do screen grabs and then try to match them up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, everyone who goes to Hollywood needs to visit the Hollywood sign. And
Of course.
most people, like this idiot here, likes to pose in front of the Hollywood sign. But I did something I've never done before. It was on my bucket list. It's a bit of a workout, but I got up behind the Hollywood sign, on top of the Hollywood sign, which is a spectacular view of Los Angeles in every direction.
Now, did you climb up there or did you drive up there?
You can't drive up there.
Oh, you can't?
It's closed to through traffic. I think local residents have access to those roads, but most of those are blocked off for tourists. So it was a hike. It was an uphill hike.
It looks like quite a hike.
Yeah, and it was quite a workout. I was breathing pretty hard. And so by the time you get to the top, it's like a pilgrimage. You know, you're up there. You see LA in every direction, and it was pretty breathtaking. You see,
it looks like it.
Downtown LA. You see Burbank behind you. I mean, you see everything in 360 degrees. It was just great. And I took a panoramic shot of the entire Hollywood sign from behind, so you can see how amazing that is. That was such a great experience, and not a lot of people I know have been up behind the Hollywood sign.
Right.
It's pretty awesome. And the first thing people ask me is, I didn't know you can get up there. Well, apparently a lot of people with money, including George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, they all contributed money to make that point more accessible to tourists.
Really?
It used to be a pretty rugged hike to get up there. Now it's a little bit more accessible.
Like steps and handrails?
Well, like walking sticks and narrow paths and that sort of stuff. So so now it's a little easier to get up there. And if you've never done it, I really recommend it.
You can still see a little of fog over the city there.
A little bit. As a matter of fact, I don't know if this is connected, but in the top left corner, it's pretty dark haze. This was wildfire season, and when we got out there were quite a few wildfires.
Yep,
and after I left, there were even more. The Getty Museum area was threatened with major wildfires.
Right.
So when we got out there was a few. As a matter of fact, one affected my plans. At one location that I was going to stay at, we got canceled because of the wildfires.
Right.
So we had to kind of change our plans a little bit to stay out there. But people were evacuated and had nowhere to go. All the hotels were filled up. It was pretty tragic.
Yeah, you're right. We were out there a number of years ago, and we had the same thing. There were wildfires out there. We went to try to get to a couple state parks. We couldn't get in, and but it was smoky.
Yeah, it was.
But I remember flying in there years ago, before they got into a lot of pollution control, and as your airplane came down, you could see the brown haze over the city.
Yeah. It's changed quite a bit.
Now it's forest smoke.
Yeah. Oh, right. Exactly. Yeah. Next stop on our tour, one of my favorite beaches and piers in the LA area is Redondo Beach Pier, and they have this arcade called the Fun Factory. And I discovered this place way back in 1989. It was one of the first beaches that I visited when I moved out there for a year. And I fell in love with the Fun Factory. It's kind of a retro arcade with skee ball and video games.
Okay.
Reminds me of my youth. Well, it just so happens that weekend that I arrived in LA, we discovered that it's closing forever, the Fun Factory.
Really?
The city kind of forced the owner out. There's a picture of me right in the center with the owner. They offered him $9 million to get out, which isn't too bad.
It's not too shabby.
But a long-time Redondo Beach tradition came to an end, and I was glad that I was able to be out there the final weekend that it was open to the public.
And you got to talk to the owner.
Yeah, he was there. He was selling off things hanging on the walls. And
really?
As a matter of fact, they're going to be having an auction to sell off a lot of the arcade games and stuff. But I don't know what the city has planned for the Fun Factory, but I'm going to miss it. It was a place that made me feel like a kid.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
You didn't bring anything back from there?
Just a little prize that we won playing skee ball, but I may check out the auction and see if I can buy something at the auction. We'll see. You could buy it online, so we'll see. Now, here's something that not many people have got to experience. This is the first time I've ever got to experience this, and this was an accident. A friend of mine who went out there with me, he went for his morning walk, and the place that we were staying at was within walking distance of Hollywood Boulevard. Well, he walked over to Graumans Chinese Theater and he noticed that they had bleachers set up and seating and all sorts of stuff. And he texted me, he said, Joe, get over here, something's going on at Graumans. So we rush over there, we squeeze into this little area off to the side and found out that they were doing a hand and footprint ceremony at Graumans Chinese Theater.
Really?
And it was, coincidentally, the guys that I saw at Comic-Con when I arrived there on Saturday, they were the ones being honored at Graumans Chinese Theater.
Wow.
It was amazing to see the celebrities actually putting their hands in the cement and giving speeches, and it was very moving. Like Kevin Smith, the director and the actor who plays Silent Bob in these movies, he told a story about how when he was a kid, his dad took him to Hollywood for a family trip,
right.
and they went to Graumans Chinese Theater, and his dad said, maybe you'll have your hands in here someday, son. And he was like, yeah, right.
Sure.
Well, all these years later, he was
Here
putting
he
his
is with
hands
his-
in the cement at Graumans Chinese Theater.
Fantastic.
Isn't that an amazing story?
Wow.
So that was great to be able to say that I've been able to see a cement ceremony at Graumans Theater. And there were all kinds of celebrities there who showed up, and the actors came over and hung out with us and chatted with us. There's
Oh, there
Kevin
you-
Smith, and
Wow.
Ben Affleck showed up.
Really?
And,
Wow.
Danny Trejo, and a lot of actors were there to wish their friends well. And I couldn't believe how nice they were. I mean, I shook Kevin Smith's hand, which was just in the cement. Like, that was just, I can't get over that. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's fantastic.
So that was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I don't know if I'll ever be able to see something like that again, but that was pretty great.
Oh yeah, and like you say, you got to meet a whole bunch of new actors there while you were there.
And while I was there, you know, as the ceremony's taking place, I was kind of going back in time and looking around and thinking Marilyn Monroe did this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Clint Eastwood and, you know, Humphrey Bogart.
All the
they
greats.
all did the ceremony
Right.
there. And
All-
there I was witnessing one happen. That was just
Yeah,
amazing.
that's fantastic.
Yeah. Do you recognize that house right there?
No.
Well, here's a story about a man named Brady. This
Oh,
is
Brady
the Brady
Bunch.
Bunch house.
Yep.
Now, there's an interesting story about this house. It was used for exteriors on the Brady Bunch TV show for the years that it was on the air. It was a real residence that somebody
Right.
lived in. But the inside of the house looked absolutely nothing like the outside of the house. The floor plan was completely different. So the interiors that we saw on television were filmed at Paramount Studios.
Right.
And this house was only used for the exteriors. Well, recently it went up for sale, and HGTV bought the house with the goal of renovating it to look exactly like it does on the TV show, inside and out.
Really?
So they built the staircase, which leads to nothing because
Right.
there's no second story in this
Yeah.
house. Alice's kitchen, Mike Brady's den, everything is exactly the way it was on the TV show.
Wow.
So we went to the house hoping we might be able to go inside and see it, and it was closed to the public, and I found out later it's because they're in the process of filming their Christmas episodes at this time of the year. So we were able to see it from the outside, but we weren't able to go inside because they were in production. So.
Yeah.
But pretty neat to see the Brady Bunch house.
Absolutely.
If you go to LA, if you're into cars, there's a really great museum called the Petersen Museum. It recently underwent some major renovations, and it's just one of the best museums in the world, automotive museums. One of the reasons I wanted to get back there was they had cars from television and film with sort of a sci-fi fantasy theme attached to them.
Okay.
So some of the vehicles you see here in this collage are the Jurassic Park Ford
I was
Explorer,
going to say, yeah.
the Batmobile, the Back to the Future DeLorean, Bumblebee from the Transformers movies, and then the thing that almost made me weep like a child
Whoa.
is the land speeder from the Star Wars movies.
Right, look at that.
This was on loan from Lucasfilm, and to see it up close and personal was just an amazing experience for me. I got emotional seeing it up close.
Now, how big is that? Is that?
It's the size of a car. It's a
is?
pretty good size. You
Because
could
I'm
sit
looking
in
at
it,
the
yeah.
guy in the upper left there, and it looks like that's probably just a little model.
No,
he's got
it's perspective because it's
Oh,
behind
okay.
me.
Okay,
but,
I see it.
But yeah, you can
Right.
sit in it, and this particular version was used to show Luke driving through the desert. And then they used different camera tricks and stuff to remove the wheels on the bottom. Later on, they
Right.
removed them digitally, but at the
Right.
time, they used strategically placed mirrors and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So So that was great to see the land speeder.
Wow.
That, to me, that's like seeing a celebrity.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, you had asked if I got to attend any TV shows. I did get tickets to see one. Tim Allen, fellow Detroiter.
Right.
He does a show called Last Man Standing. That's filmed at CBS Television. So tickets are free to see these TV shows.
Wow.
You just got to go online and get them. You show up, you stand in line briefly, and then they take you into the studio. They get you seated. And it took about 2 hours to shoot the half-hour episode of Last Man Standing.
Really?
And it was fun because the actors would mess up lines and they would redo things. Tim Allen would try a joke and then he would say, let me try it a different way, and he would try a different joke that would get a bigger laugh. And so
did they actually use the audience as
the laugh track?
Oh, it was a laugh track.
Yeah. They have microphones hanging over your head and they encourage you. They're like, even if you don't find it funny, do us a favor and laugh, because they need that laughter.
Sure.
So that was great to see fellow Detroiter Tim Allen doing a TV show.
That's fantastic.
That was great.
Yeah.
So the new season is going to be starting in January of 2020.
So how long before you get there do you have to order these tickets?
They were available to the public probably about a month or so before my trip. So you want to start looking about a month ahead of time.
Okay.
There are different websites that will let you know when tickets become available, and they always oversell them because they want to fill the auditorium.
Sure.
So when you get your ticket, that's no guarantee you're going to get in. You have to get there early and stand in line and try to guarantee that you're going to get a seat.
Okay.
But you can see TV shows, you can see talk shows. I've seen Conan O'Brien. I saw Jimmy Kimmel. There's just a wide number of things you can get tickets for to see in person. So that was a lot of fun. So another little bit of history here, another famous restaurant, the Formosa restaurant on Formosa Avenue in LA. One of my all-time favorite restaurants, a lot of history there. Also appeared in a film called LA Confidential, a really great film noir detective story. It closed about 2 years ago, and this company came in and did a full renovation to restore it back to its former glory, and it just reopened just a couple of months ago. So I asked my friends, hey, do you want to go check out this Formosa? And they said, yeah, and it's such a beautiful place. It's one of my favorite places, and there's a lot of history and a lot of stories there. One story that the wait staff told me was, one time John Wayne was there because it was close to the movie studio, so a lot of they would go there for lunch, you know.
Sure.
And they said John Wayne went there one night with a group of friends, had too much to drink, passed out. Well, the guy was huge, you know. He was 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah.
They didn't know what to do with him, so they locked him in. They left him in the booth. They closed up for the night. Staff went home. They came back the next morning, and he was in the kitchen making breakfast for himself. So imagine those kind of stories at these places.
Right.
It's just incredible history. So very good Chinese food on the menu.
Well, let me ask you about price. When you go there and have lunch, for example.
It's all very reasonable.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, places like Musso and Frank, you might pay $30 for dinner, but a place like this, you can go there and get a nice little Chinese meal and, $15, $18.
Really?
Yeah.
Still, huh?
Yeah, not too bad.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah. So there's another place with interesting history. My friend Sherry told me about this. It's the Greystone Mansion, and a lot of history there is also featured in movies. One in particular is The Big Lebowski, which is one of my favorite comedies. This has, you have to go online and you have to read about the Greystone Mansion. Apparently it was a site of a murder-suicide. So it's open to tours. We weren't able to get inside because the interiors are on tour maybe once a month. But you can walk the grounds. There's beautiful gardens. There's lots to see. So Greystone Mansion is a neat historical place to visit.
So you guys didn't get in?
Not inside, but if I were to time it right, we could book a tour and then get a tour of the mansion.
Yeah, cool.
There's so much architecture and really neat things to see in LA. This is the interior of the Bradbury Building in LA. It was designed by a guy who had very little experience designing buildings, so he kind of broke all the rules and created this amazing piece of art, and it's been featured in films like Blade Runner with Harrison Ford, and 2011, I think it was, Oscar winner, The Artist, which was a silent film. It was a modern silent film, And it's just a beautiful building. It was just amazing to see in person. So another really neat place. This is at Formosa Beach by the pier, the Lighthouse Cafe. You would love it. Great music and blues.
I was going to say, there's several jazz albums that were cut out there back in the 1950s.
Yeah, so as you know, it has a history.
Yeah.
And again, another film location. This was seen in La La Land, which was the movie that almost won Best Picture. It was announced as the Best Picture winner, and then they made a mistake and realized they gave it to the wrong movie. But the Lighthouse is featured pretty heavily in La La Land, and really, really neat location.
It looks like a small place.
It's kind of tiny, but it's really neat, and the live music is awesome. It's
a lot of history in terms of music. For sure.
So this is one of the last days I was out there. As a matter of fact, I think this was the last day. Another long hike. We went to this park in Malibu. And it was the filming location for MASH, the entire run of the MASH TV show.
Really?
Now, unfortunately, that area has been burned many times over by the wildfires. So the sign that I'm standing there next to, that's been replicated because the previous one they had up burned in the last wildfire in 2018. But they have vehicles on location that have been there since the filming.
Really?
Just decrepit old Jeeps and trucks that have been there forever.
Wow.
And when you look at stills and stuff from the TV show, you'll notice all the peaks and mountains and everything all match up exactly. So the catch here is that it's a 3-mile hike to that location and a 3-mile hike back out. So you have to have water and walking shoes and be prepared for it.
So you can't drive in there?
Nope, can't drive up to that location. It's a good walk. So you pull into this park, you pay $6 or something, you park, and then you get out and you take a hike. Yeah.
So it's 3 miles in, 3 miles back.
Yeah.
So it's a 6-mile.
It is, total trip. But it was really cool to see and great photo op.
So you got to be pumping iron there, Joe, with climbing up to the top of the sign.
Yeah,
doing this
I felt
6-mile
pretty
hike.
good by the end of the week.
That's great.
I felt like I was rejuvenated because I did a lot of walking.
That's great.
And then I have one last location that you may recognize. I surprised my buddy. We went to this beach. It's called the Westward Beach near, what are those beaches called? Zuma Beach. When we walked up and approached it, he knew immediately what it was from. It's from the climatic ending of Planet of the Apes, where Charlton Heston realizes he's been on Earth the whole time. Spoiler alert. But that was filmed at this LA beach. They used a matte painting to put in the Statue of Liberty for the big reveal at the end of the movie.
Okay.
But it's a secluded cove. You kind of have to climb over these boulders to get to the beach where they filmed. But once you stand there, you go, this is it. This is where they filmed it. So there's me in the top right corner recreating Charlton Heston's famous overacting. So that's how our trip sort of came to an end, was a trip to the Planet of the Apes filming location. So,
boy, that sounds like a fantastic trip.
Yeah.
Got a chance to hobnob with all the best.
Celebrities, filming locations,
restaurants,
good food, good friends.
Yeah.
It was one of the greatest trips of my life. It was
fantastic.
just so much fun.
So when you go out there, how do you work with? Where do you stay?
Well, like I said, I have friends and family out there. So when I went out there in 2015, I stayed with some cousins who live in Rancho Cucamonga. That's about a 45-minute drive into LA.
Okay.
I have a friend that has since moved out there 5 years ago. Her and her daughter. Her daughter's an actor in LA now, and they ended up buying a house that has a guest house. And so she invites me to stay at the guest house. Now that's the place that I had lined up, but the wildfires forced the evacuations of that neighborhood. So luckily, Jen and her daughter were going to New Zealand to film a project. So luckily they were able to escape all that. Now their neighborhood is fine, nothing burned. It was just a lot of smoke damage.
Right.
So that's one place. And then my friend Sherry, she's been out there about 14 or 15 years. She lives right in the heart of Hollywood. And so all that touristy stuff was within walking distance of her apartment. So that's where I stayed for my most recent trip. Yeah.
Well, Joe, thank you. Thank you very
pleasure.
much for appearing on our wonderful show. It's been very, very, very interesting listening to your stories about hobnobbing with the rich and famous.
Well, thank you, and I'm already making plans to get out there next year.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you on the next episode of Active Living.